Literally, you can make money if you use your brain. Hey ladies, it's Dominga. Today, I figured I would tell you about a time that I made $11,000 in one day. I'm so hot. First of all, I must derobe. Sorry. This was the easiest, most low effort, hands-off business idea that I ever had, and you can literally just copy me, just emulate this where you live, and you could have $11,000 too. If you do it better, you could probably have more. Okay. Of course, the first step in any new business venture is to mentally get out of your own way. I could have sat around and thought, oh, I can't pull this off. Actually, I did sit around and think that, but I did it anyway, and it worked out. I think allowing yourself the permission to do something new and potentially even have to fail at it until you get it right is the mindset work that you need to do to pull off a successful business venture. Okay, so the way that I did this was I planned a color run. And for those of you who are not familiar, I will pop up on the screen what that looks like. It's essentially a 5K or a 10K, but with color powder that's biodegradable and fine for the earth, thrown at the runners as they complete the course. I direct a nonprofit food bank, so that's what kind of got me thinking about unique ways to make money, because I was trying to fundraise for the organization, and this is kind of what naturally came to mind. I personally suggest doing a 5K instead of any longer distance, because it's just enough that it could attract adults, but also people could sign up their children instead of it being like a 10K or a half marathon. That's a little bit too much to bring in many different age groups. Of course, I wanted it to be a little bit more than a mile or two so that it could bring in people who actually enjoy running. If this is something that you might want to do, you're going to want to think about the distance, because different distances are going to pull in different demographics when you work on the marketing. When I was budgeting this out with the other girls who work on my team, I was like, well, how much money do we want to spend on this? And personally, I was willing to part with $500, not a cent more. It's paramount to figure out how much money you're willing to invest into the event, because everything else you'll have to decide falls underneath of that. So find that magic number for you, whatever you're willing to part with. And I should have mentioned earlier, you don't necessarily need to be doing this for a nonprofit or for some sort of community service effort. This can be something where you personally pocket the money. Just because I didn't doesn't mean that this isn't a model that you could not repurpose for your personal life. I just had a random thought pop into my head. If you decide that you want to do this and it's not for a nonprofit or for community service, in other words, it's not something that you're going to be able to make tax deductible, when it comes time to have different sponsors of the event, you might want to do a certain part of it as a donation so that they feel more led to give. So for example, there's a grocery store called Wegmans, and we wanted them to donate the waters, a tent, some signage, which was a little perk for them, and bananas, so that people who were running the race could get hydrated but also have little snacks here and there. And I'm pretty sure we got the yes, because from Wegmans' perspective, they're able to write that off on their taxes at the end of the year because they worked for a nonprofit. So to reiterate my point, if you're doing this personally, say that you want to donate 5-10% of the overall event to the American Red Cross, for example, which is a nonprofit, you might be able to have that wiggle room, have that kind of loophole within there. So you can have some of the money personally, but you can also have these different brands and organizations work with you and they can write it off too. So this is super important. You're going to want to establish the date and the time pretty early on, if that's not one of the first things you do when it comes to planning your race. And the reason why is obviously in different places, it's going to be hotter or cooler in certain times. And think about the running aspect. If it's the dead of summer, maybe let's not run in the middle of the day. Maybe plan your race in the morning. If it's winter, maybe don't choose the dead of winter to have runners outside so they don't pull muscles. And this leads me to my next point. You're going to then start thinking about liability. You don't want people to be running at the peak heat or the peak cold, because you don't want to be liable for any injuries that they have. And I'll get into liability in a moment. You're going to have people sign a waiver so that you're not responsible in case someone does get hurt, if someone passes out or they pull a muscle or whatever happens on the course. But you don't want people to have negative associations with your event. You don't want people to think, oh yeah, I ran this race and that was the worst day of my life. You want them to have positive associations, and that's exactly why you're going to try and plan it at a time that makes sense for the runners. Now it's time to talk about the venue. If in fact you've decided to take my advice and you're going to donate a certain amount of the proceeds to a nonprofit, actually, haha, you could choose mine. Free game, shameless plug. It's called Helping Hands Food Distributors if you're interested. Anyway, if you are going to donate some of the money, then you can even find a venue that may specifically work with you because of that. So the park that Helping Hands decided to have the race in was technically a nonprofit as well. I think my point here is that you want to find a place that you don't have to pay for. And if you do have to pay for it, you don't want to have to pay an astronomical amount of money, because I think the point here is to make money and not to spend it. If you decide that's not what you're going to do, you can reach out to local parks in your area that are owned by your local government, and they'll probably cut you a deal because it's just public space anyway. There are permits that go into place that do cost money, but it could be anywhere from, say, like $20 an hour up to $500 an hour. It kind of depends on the affluence of the park, the size of the city you live in, so they will walk you through that process. When it comes time to plan out your course, you're going to go to the park that you booked and just make up your own course until you hit the amount of distance that you have publicized or advertised for. When it comes to race day, one thing that we did was we put little flags in the ground, which we found at Lowe's, you can find at Home Depot, throughout the course so that people weren't lost. You can also mark off the course in different kind of ways. I'll pop up on the screen some different ways that you can do that. And then I also placed volunteers throughout the course to cheer and throw color so that people weren't like, where do I go now? I ran cross country middle school through college, and I remember so often being lost on the course, like, where do I go next? And that's not the experience you want people to have, especially because they're paying you. You want to be clear about your course. And it's super fun. In this kind of race, you can place volunteers every so often throughout your course, have them throwing color, especially if you're not buying those machines that blow the color, because that's a pricier way to do things. If you're just having people kind of throw the color at the running participants, that'll help keep them on track, because obviously where the people are is probably where the course is. And depending on where you do this, you may need police and EMS coordination, which does cost money. Might be a couple $100s for, say, an hour or two, but you do want paramedics to be there just in case if anything happens to anyone, and you do want police to be there for security reasons. Your goal of this whole thing is to come out with money, not coming out getting sued. And everything I'm saying is very Googleable. So say that you are going to plan a big race, I would Google what kind of city permit do I need to have a road closure in Denver, and it's going to pop up the correct websites to lead you to the right person to talk to. And I would be more specific if I knew exactly where you live. This is something that I could mentor you through if you needed, so drop a comment if you need the help. But it is very figure outable. Everything is figure outable, which is probably why I've had the success that I've had, because I believe I'll figure it out, even if it's hard and it takes me a long time. Who cares? Whatever. I did mention that we had some sponsors of the race a little bit earlier, and how Wegmans sponsored the water. What you're going to want to do is have different stations throughout your course where you have water and you have snacks, just in case if anyone feels faint or dehydrated. You don't want that on your hands. This is where it gets helpful to have other people on your team. Considering I direct a nonprofit, there are other people who could decide they wanted to help with marketing. One of the girls decided she wanted to do the fundraising. A person who's in charge of mailing out the shirts, mailing out the bibs. Someone who was in charge of ordering this big rainbow banner we had. Someone who was in charge of ordering all of the inflatables that we had. There are so many bits and pieces, and it's helpful if you can delegate, but if you can't, and this is only an effort that you're putting on, that is fine. You can do it. And this literally is not clickbait. We were able to establish all of these different things within a day, just sitting down being like, I'm going to email this person, I'm going to email these brands, see if they want to support, and just kind of keep an eye on it in the background. It's not something that has to take all of your time. We offered some pricing tiers. There was early bird, there was general, and then there was like last minute sign up. So there was, a bigger discount if you signed up earlier, and it kind of got more expensive the longer you waited. When it came to advertising this, it was lots of word of mouth. We publicized it through paid ads, which was not all that much. It was like $200. And then I also advertised on the news, but I am a news reporter, so it didn't cost me any money. In addition to reaching out to the media, you can reach out to local influencers. Go on TikTok, type in, say you live in Denver like I do, type in Denver influencers, find people who are kind of like medium-sized influencers, like 10 to 20K, and be like, hey, will you post about this? Like, I'll send you a free shirt and you can have free admission to the day. And if they're the kind of influencer that is making content about things to do in Denver, they'll probably do it for you without expecting you to give them thousands of dollars. Also, a little food for thought: if it feels overwhelming to you to do this for the community at large, you could pick a school and try and do it for like a middle or an elementary school and donate a certain amount of money that's raised to a specific cause. And then with the person who's helping you coordinate this event, whether it be the principal or somebody else, you could think up, say, for example, a scholarship and give away $2,000 to a student who has, I don't know, good grades, or who seems like a leader in the student body. And then the school might be more willing to say yes to you. Then you don't have to battle all of the permits and the waivers. It's just like the school takes on the liability the same way they do for a traditional gym class. So just get the creative juices in your brain flowing and you can literally make money with this model. I'm fighting the sun here, can you tell? I kind of forgot to say, if you work with a school, you can energize the student body to be your participants. Like staff, faculty, students can run in it. And then you're not advertising to the community at large. You're advertising specifically to this student body. You could have $55,000 in a month if you did this for 5 schools. That's what, 1 a week, and then on 1 week you do 2 schools. That would be amazing. Literally, you can make money if you use your brain. Last part, but pretty important, and you're probably already thinking this on your own: how do people sign up for this? After we advertise it, what do people do? What we did was we put a QR code in the commercial, and obviously there was a link in the advertisements that were coming across through your phone. And I'm going to break this down in case we're just like really needing the extra reiteration. After you scan the QR code or click that link, it's going to bring you to a page that is run by a third party. And what's amazing about this, you don't have to front them any money. They take a certain percentage of the proceeds of your race, and they help you do things like make your own bibs, and you can sort of add your own graphic design. They will help you order t-shirts if you want to. There are certain platforms that you can even order the color from. I didn't do that. We used Amazon, and it was like $300. And while I'm talking about the color, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be scatterbrained, but you are going to want to order enough. So based off of how many people are signing up is probably how much color you're going to need. And I'm going to pop up a ratio here at the bottom because it's not in my head at the moment, but for however many people, you're going to want a certain amount of color. You really, really want to have enough, or your photos are not going to come out cool because there's not going to be enough color and it's not going to be fun. So make sure to just double down on the visual aspects, because if this is something that you want to do over and over again, you need the first one to go well so that you have the pictures to promote it and it looks like it was a good time, so people will sign up in the future. And before I go, you do want to leave yourself enough time for the planning, but the reason I titled this "I made $11,000 in one day" is because that's truly how it felt. Everything was so mindless. This process sounds strenuous, but I promise it really felt very hands-off. And when we came away with $11,000 for quite minimal work, I mean, the work is just sending emails, literally, and waiting to get responses. It felt so great, and we were able to feed so many people in the local community. But again, you can do this for yourself. It does not necessarily have to be a noble philanthropic effort, but if you want it to be, that's even better. I think that's great. If there's anything that I've left out or you're confused about, please leave me a comment. I will definitely see it. I will definitely respond. And I wanted to make this video because there's nothing like being financially frustrated, especially when we have so much ambition and access to the internet. Okay guys, I love you so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.